Welcome to the Fit Dad Nation podcast, forging strong fathers and raising a stronger generation. It's time to get up or shut up with your host, Steve Roy.
Hey guys, this is Steve Roy, the host of the Fit Dad Nation podcast. Welcome to the show and thanks for listening. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to take a quick moment to invite all you dads who are listening right now and who are ready to start taking action on reclaiming your health and fitness and becoming better fathers and better men to join our online community. The best way to do that is to apply to our free private Facebook group, which can be found at fitdadnation.com/community. So my guest today is Dr. Ron Ehrlich, and Dr. Ron is a dentist turned holistic health advocate and stress expert, and is the author of A Life Less Stressed, The 5 Pillars of Health and Wellness. He's also the host of the podcast called Unstress with Dr. Ron Ehrlich. And I'm actually really excited to hear his thoughts on a number of topics. So Dr. Ron, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So we were chatting a little bit before we started rolling here, and I'm fascinated by what you're doing. So you're a dentist, right? And I'm just so curious to hear about how you ended up taking this whole other path down this kind of holistic approach to mental and physical and emotional health and wellness. But before we get into that, maybe you could just, share a little bit of insights on your background, how you got started and how you ended up, being this author and podcaster. And yeah, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, look, I've been in clinical practice for almost 40 years. It's hard to believe, but very, very early on in my career, literally within the first year or two, I found myself treating a lot of people with chronic head and neck pain. It was used to be referred to as temporomandibular joint dysfunction or just jaw joint problems, and the fact that people clench or grind their teeth and the effect that that has on muscles at the back of the neck and around the head and actually throughout the whole body. So, I originally thought it was all about imbalances in the bite, of which there are many. When you ask people, how many people have, listening to this, have all 32 of their teeth through and in perfect alignment? I don't think there'd be too many people putting their hand up. How many people have clicking or popping jaw joints? A lot of people be putting their hand up. And how many people clench or grind the teeth as well? And a lot of people do that as well. So that's where I started. And in about 1983, I was doing a lot of courses, and I did one in the States, and somebody presented me with a model of stress that has guided my professional and personal development ever since. And that person said, yes, our health is affected by stress, but stress is a combination of emotional, environmental, postural, nutritional, and dental stress. So that 5 stress model has kind of guided me in all the things. I mean, it's a model that's a great model for asking all the right questions. And so I then embarked on learning more about posture, about exercise. I did a lot of research with a podiatrist on the effect of posture on clenching and grinding on muscles throughout the body. I then got my fellowship in 1996 in nutritional and environmental medicine, and I actually am now president of the Australasian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine. And it just guided me through my learning professionally over the years, and then eventually I felt after about 35 years, I thought, you know what, it might not be a bad idea to write a book and just draw a line in the sand about all the things that I'd learnt along the way and share with it's actually something that I wanted to share with every single patient I ever saw, but of course you don't have time to do that. So this is more or less a conversation I wish I could have shared with every single patient I've ever seen. And it's a kind of a line in the sand from which to say, well, this is what I've learnt to this point. And I'm sure you know this, Steve, that the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. Mm-hmm. And after 40 years of practice and all the things that I'm interested in, I realized that very strongly. I mean, I often say I only wish I knew as much as I thought I did when I graduated. When I graduated, I thought I knew everything. Mm-hmm. And it's just been a journey ever since that's brought me to this point. And I'm just continue to learn. I have this podcast as well. And like I'm sure you realize, the nice part about doing a podcast is you get to ask people questions that know a lot more than you do. This is my case, Steve, not just yours. And they answer them, and I learn. So it's just been that's the thing about health. There's just so much to learn, and it's so rewarding. So that's where I'm at this point in my life.
Got it. Yeah, and I love what you're doing, and I love the approach that you're taking. But before we get into that, let's just kind of get over this whole holistic thing. So I'm sure you've heard it a million times. When people hear holistic advocate or holistic anything, it's new agey, it's foo-foo-y, and I've actually been in a similar boat. I mean, I've thought about that as well before, but that's not the case at all. I mean, you're working on a science-based, you're looking at research. It's not anything like that. You're sitting in some temple praying and thinking about this stuff. It's, this is legit science.
Well, the thing is, people love certainty, and they love simple answers to questions, and they love to think that things are right or wrong or good or bad. And the human body isn't quite as simple as that. In fact, like you said, holistic is not some new age philosophy. It just happens to be the way the body works, and it just happens to be the way our planet works, and the two are intimately connected. And a lot of people find it a bit challenging to get their head around that concept because they're looking for simple answers and certainty in their life. And I totally get that, but it's just not the way the world or the body works. So holistic is not a new age philosophy. It's just the way things work.
Sure. So, what's interesting is, I've been going obviously to dentists my whole life, and rarely do they talk about anything other than your teeth. So I'm reading your stuff, and I'm reading about how dental stress is related to things like digestion and sleep, infections, our breathing and posture. I mean, how did you even figure all that out? I mean, I know you said you had spoken with somebody years ago, but how did you make all those connections of how it's all kind of related?
Well, I think one of the things as a practitioner, a health practitioner, is if you keep an open mind and you listen to people of different disciplines and you try to work out how what they're doing has worked. Like I did stuff for people with chronic headaches. I might have made them a night guard to wear in their mouth at night so it released the stress of muscles around the head and neck. And that worked really well. But I had other people come in who said, no, I cured my headache through diet. And I thought, well, hang on, how could that be? What I'm doing works. Surely that must just be hocus pocus. But if you keep an open mind, then you start to learn about how nutritionally that could impact on chronic pain. And it's quite an interesting story, but that's part of the learning process. Then you hear about somebody else that's gone to a chiropractor or an osteopath who had this or that corrected, and that corrected the very condition that you were treating in a different way. And so you think, how did that happen? And then you learn about that. And then you hear about someone else who went to see a podiatrist who straightened out the way they walked, and that got rid of their back pain, and then that got rid of their headaches and neck aches. And you kind of think, wow, how did that work? And then someone else talks about meditation, that helping, and another person says, I went to see a breathing physiologist, respiratory physiologist, and that helped me. And as long as you keep an open mind and go back to some basics of anatomy, biochemistry, and physiology, it all starts to fit together. But if you try to protect your position and what you do, then you are very cynical of others and what they do, and you don't take on this holistic approach. So, yeah, look, I include dental stress in my stress model. I said stress is a combination of those 5 stresses, and I include dental stress for 2 reasons. One, I'm a dentist, so I know what I'm talking about, a holistic dentist. And 2, I include it for anybody with a mouth who is interested in their health but has never fully connected the two. And there are so many connections that, you mentioned. For example, the mouth is the site of the 2 most common infections known to man, woman, or child, that is tooth decay and gum disease. Chronic inflammation is the common denominator that runs through every single disease: heart disease, cancer, autoimmune, diabetes. Chronic inflammation is the common denominator. And because the body's connected, if you've got chronic inflammation somewhere in the body, it will affect other parts of the body. And guess where the most common site of chronic inflammation is? In the mouth. When was the last time someone flossed their teeth and they had a little bit of bleeding? Well, guess what? That's a sign of chronic inflammation. So there's inflammation. It's the beginning of the digestive tract. So if you think digestion is important breaking your food down and starting the digestive process in the mouth improves your ability to absorb your nutrients. So there's that. The shape and size of the mouth determines the shape and size of the upper airway. So if you think breathing is important, a narrow mouth means you've got a narrow upper airway, and that predisposes you to a whole range of respiratory problems, let alone poor sleep. If you're a mouth breather versus a nose breather, because noses are for breathing, mouths are for feeding, if you're a mouth breather, then that affects your posture. You end up with a more head-forward posture. It's the most sensitive part of the body. So if you clench or grind your teeth, not only do your jaw muscles tighten up, but so do the muscles at the back of the neck, so do the muscles at the base of the spine. And there's even a Japanese study which showed even calf muscles tighten when you clench your jaw. So that's where the chronic musculoskeletal pain part of it comes in. We implant more materials into people's bodies in the form of fillings, crowns, implants, dentures, than all other health professionals put together. So, the chance for putting something in that may be toxic or not, say, biocompatible, is there, and that can affect your body way beyond your mouth. So there's so many things to consider. And if you've got an open mind in the process and you try to put all these things together, you end up with a book like A Life Less Stressed and a philosophy that I have been following for 40 years.
Wow, that's a lot. So when you were saying that, I would just start thinking, yes, that's me, mouth breather, poor posture, and you always, don't think about that. I mean, I would have never correlated mouth breathing or the way that, like if I'm breathing through my mouth when I'm sleeping, how it would potentially affect my posture. I think, well, I just been sitting at a desk for a lot of years, so my shoulders come forward, my head comes forward, I have lousy posture. But yeah, it's all interrelated. And what you said earlier made so much sense because, it's all of these separate things that can work, It could be diet related, it could be exercise, that could be the thing that works for somebody. And it's like, I hear this all the time when someone talks about the best way to lose weight. I mean, you see it. No, it's the keto. No, it's the paleo. No, it's something else. It's this, it's that. And everyone's got the right thing. But at the end of the day, they all can work. It's dependent on the person, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where medicine and healthcare is headed, and that is to a more individualized approach and to work out what is right for you. And that may not be the same as what is right for your best friend or your partner. Working out what's right for you is important. And really, I think probably the most important message, and I think this is part of what you're doing, Steve, too, is about personal empowerment and taking control of your own health. But in order to do that, you need a certain amount of basic knowledge. It's not complicated. It's basic, but you do need that. And so that's a way of thinking about things that's really important.
Exactly. And I like to say that it's not rocket science, it's just science. It's simple, right? It's not complicated. It's not easy to do it, but it's simple, right? And that's one of the things I can appreciate about what you're doing is, you're just right to the point and you talk about the basics, and that's what we're all about. That's what I teach. I mean, everybody loves to push, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but everyone wants to sell you something, a hack, a supplement, a powder, something that's going to shortcut the time to get fit or lean or whatever your goal is. And it just, most of it is just BS. And it really comes down to a handful of basics, right? That you just repeatedly do over and over, just make it consistent. And that's how you get healthy and you stay healthy. But in this country anyway, I know you're from Australia, so it may be different there. But here, obesity is out of control. Lifestyle is horrible, high stress, terrible diets, lack of exercise, sedentary lifestyles. Everybody's staring at their phones. It's terrible here, and it's getting worse, not better.
Well, I don't think it's any different in Australia, Steve. And when I saw that, you're doing this thing called Fit Dad Nation, I thought, wow, is that where the United States is at the moment? Is it a Fit Dad Nation? It's more aspirational, but you've got to start somewhere. And I think, as I said, what you're doing is a great place to start.
Yeah. I mean, my whole idea wasn't to have a collaboration of fit dads in a group. It's basically, my goal for this was to have a bunch of fat dads that become fit dads through following the basics of, what just good health and fitness. And, I'm constantly posting and sharing content that relates to just the basics. Let's forget about everything that you're seeing on TV and the Shark Tank and all of these products and these one-offs and programs and these diet books that are lining the shelves that promise these insane results. It's ridiculous. And
no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So share with us, you have the book here, and you share the 5 pillars of health and wellness, and I want to hear about these 5 pillars.
Yeah. Well, I think, take a step back from this, and this is just kind of saying everyone is stressed. You talk to people, everyone is stressed. It's almost like worn as a badge of honor. And I think there are 2 parts to this. One is, yes, we are all stressed, and you can't live without stress. In fact, some stress is good, and exercise is a good example of stressing your body in a good way. On one side of the equation is stress, and if you're going to try and minimize, and I define stress as being anything that compromises your immune system or promotes chronic inflammation, because as I said, that's the common denominator in all disease. So if you're going to deal with stress, you've got to know what stress is, and so that's why I use that 5 stressor model. So identify the stresses and minimize what you can. But the other side of the equation are the 5 pillars of health and wellness. And they are quite simply sleep, breathe, nourish, move, and think. And what you're trying to do there is to build physical, mental, and emotional resilience to deal with the stresses of life that we all confront in our modern world. So they are the 5 pillars. And if you, they're not a linear thing, because one affects the other. But if you had to start with one pillar, I would say, without a doubt, the most important part of anybody's day is a consistently good night's sleep. And so focusing, when I talk to people about health and wellness, and I have my own program called Simply Be Well, because it's not complicated, I say, let's for the next month not do anything, but just commit to a consistently good night's sleep. And what does that mean? Well, a consistently good night's sleep is a function of quantity and quality. So quantity for 90%, at least 90% of the population, that means between 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Now, people who sleep 3 to 4 hours a night know that they are not getting enough sleep. It's the people that are sleeping 5 to 6 hours a night that are the most interesting, because many of them, particularly those around the 6-hour mark, think they are getting enough sleep, but they perform in many health measures, physically and mentally, just as badly as the 3 to 4 hours a night. So consistently good night's sleep is a function of quantity, 7 to 9 hours, and quality. Putting your head on the pillow is not enough. You have to be breathing well while you're asleep. Sleep is an opportunity for the body and mind to rebuild and reboot. And so breathing well while you're asleep is really important, a part of that. And so then it gets into what does breathing well mean? And that leads us into another pillar, which is breathe. The secret, Steve, to living a long life, and I don't think I'm giving away too much here, is to keep breathing for as long as you can. But the secret to living a life well, in health and wellness, is to breathe well for as long as you can. And there is a very big difference between just breathing and breathing well. And the difference is this. Breathing well means you should be breathing through your nose. Noses are for breathing. Noses warm, humidify, and filter the air before you take it into your lungs. When you breathe through your nose, your body in the sinuses, the body creates something called nitric oxide, which is that's not nitrous oxide, which you get in the dentist's surgery or when you're pregnant. It's nitric oxide, which is a really important body regulator that increases circulation throughout the body. It's antimicrobial. So breathing through your nose has so many positive things. It also improves posture because you don't have to tilt your head back to open up your airway as you do when you breathe through your mouth. It also reduces the likelihood of you getting respiratory infection. So for young kids who get recurring upper respiratory enlarged tonsils, they're on lots of courses of antibiotics. People should be looking at whether they're nose breathing or mouth breathing. Bedwetting. There's an interesting one, Steve. I had a patient in just before I came away on holidays who was coming in for an orthodontic opinion, and I noticed while she was sitting there that she was breathing too fast. So when we talk about breathing well, it's not just nasal breathing, but it's breathing at a rate somewhere between 8 to 12 breaths per minute. That's really important because what breathing does is it balances out body chemistry. It balances out the acid and alkali in the body. And a lot of people go on alkali diets or they drink alkalizing water. There's a much better way of balancing out your body chemistry, and that is breathing well. So this young girl came in to see me, 12 years old, and she was still wetting her bed. And that's a big enough problem as it is, but she had younger siblings that were 10 and 8, and they were not wetting their bed. And they had been to see a urologist, a neurologist, a psychologist. They had spent almost $10,000 on various treatments trying to cure this girl of wetting her bed. It's called enuresis. And I was looking at her and she was breathing really fast with a mouth open, hyperventilating almost. And because I'm aware of this, I said to the father, look, I think she's actually the problem with her bedwetting is she is over breathing, and that's causing her body chemistry to go out of balance, which in turn causes smooth muscle to contract, and the bladder is smooth muscle. So what I suggested she did was use a little bit of paper tape, micropore tape, on the mouth and just sit there in my surgery and put this tape on for a few minutes. And he said, well, I think she's got a really blocked nose. She won't be able to do that. And I said, well, if she can't, then we'll take the tape off. So she put the tape on the mouth and she just calmed her breathing down. And after about a minute or two, she noticed that she could actually breathe through her nose because the nitric oxide that I mentioned to you before had kicked in and opened up her nasal passages. So then she went off. She had confidence enough to go off, and her father had to sleep in the room with her because he was really worried about this. And I said, sure, look, I'm only telling you to put tape on her mouth, not tape her hands behind her back. She'll take a tape off if it's not comfortable. Anyway, one night with a $2 piece of tape and her enuresis was solved. So that's pretty remarkable, and that translates to a lot of adults who get up at night to go to the bathroom. That's quite a common occurrence. We ask our patients 3 very important questions about sleep. Is it easy for you to fall asleep at night? Yes or no? You should be able to fall asleep within 20 minutes. Do you wake up through the night? Yes or no? Do you need to go to the bathroom? Many people get up and go at least once and sometimes 2 or 3 times to go to the bathroom. They don't think of it, but that is often a reflection of breathing going out of balance. And the most important question is, do you wake up feeling refreshed? Because that's what sleep is about. So in terms of the pillars of health, sleeping and breathing, and that's just a snapshot of what goes on, because there are so many positive things that happen when you get a consistently good night's sleep, and the difference that it makes to your mental and physical well-being. I mean, if you start talking about diet and binge eating, when you're not sleeping well, your body produces a hormone called ghrelin. It comes in the stomach and it makes you hungry. So when you're tired, it's not just that you're weak, you've got no willpower. It's because your hormones are out of balance, and this hormone called ghrelin is telling you eat more, eat more, eat more. And instead of the front part of your brain where you make all the really sensible decisions being more active in a well-rested person, the reptilian part of your brain kicks in and you start making decisions that aren't best for your health. And this is all a function of it's not the only reason people do that, but sleep, a consistently good night's sleep with quality and quantity, is really a critical part of that 5-pillar model.
Wow, as you're talking about this, my mind is going crazy here, because I sleep terribly, and I can't fall asleep without, lately anyway, like Tylenol PM. I get up 3-4 times a night to go to the bathroom. I don't feel rested, and so I have always just attributed it to stress. I mean, I'm not alone here. I know there are a lot of guys listening right now that same thing, right? Stress, your mind can't shut off, and that's what I've always thought it was. I've never really paid attention to my breathing, though. I don't even know if I'm a nose or mouth breather. I've never really paid attention to it.
Well, one of the things about sleep is that there is a thing called sleep hygiene. Now, people come into the dentist and they expect me to be talking about brushing and flossing, and that's oral hygiene, and that's very important. And there it is, I've said it, I've performed my duty as a dentist. But there's a far more important, dare I say it, thing, and that is called sleep hygiene. And that is, once you've accepted that sleep is important, then you have to start working on it. And that means sleep hygiene. So what does that mean? Well, the first thing is you've got to prioritize it and say, this is important. I'm taking this seriously. Okay. The second thing is routine. Now, when my daughter was born, and she's now 33 years old, but when my daughter was born, the pediatrician said, you've got to teach your child to sleep. In the first year of life, that is the most important thing. And that was actually the best bit of advice. She said, routine, routine, routine. Your baby loves routine. Well, guess what? It's not just your baby that loves routine. We all love routine. And we are routine animals. I mean, we wake up with the sun and we go, it affects us. We love routine. So getting into a good routine around sleep is important. So what does that mean? Well, it means switching off. I used to be a person that went to bed at 12 and 1 o'clock because I thought, gee, once the kids were asleep, that's when we had time to ourselves. That's when I did all my best work. And I would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I was that person who used to sleep 6 hours a day. 15 or 20 years ago, I started to learn about sleep and take it seriously. And it has transformed my life. I mean, I'm now almost 64 years old, Steve. I can't believe it, but there it is. And I have quite a deal of energy, and I attribute a lot of that to a good sleep. So routine is important, which means I'm usually in bed now by 9:30, lights out by 10 o'clock, which means I set a mental alarm for myself around 8:30, at an hour before I go to bed. And that hour, I stop computers. I do not look at my computer. I do not look at my tablet. I do not look at emails. I do not look at social media. There are so many reasons why you shouldn't do that if you are serious about sleep, if you are going to prioritize sleep. Number one, the blue light from the screens affects the melatonin, which is a really important hormone for regulating our sleep. So that's number one. Number two, this is no time to connect with the world and solve all of the world's problems or hear about your friends, how wonderful they are on Facebook and what they've just done on Snapchat or whatever. This is a time to connect seriously for your own mental and physical health with your pillow. And so get all technology out of the way an hour before you go to bed. And certainly within the bedroom, do not put your mobile phones or any mobile devices within a 2-meter radius of your head. Wi-Fi radiation has now been classified by the World Health Organization as a Class 2B carcinogen, which means it has the potential to cause cancer. Well, whether it causes cancer or not, we are electrical beings. Every cell in our body works on currents, minute currents. So why would you put Wi-Fi radiation close to your head when you're trying to rest? So move all technology away from your bed. Make sure the room is dark. Make sure the room is cool. It's all about fluids and eating, and exercise is good, and getting out in the sun during the day is good because that's about circadian rhythms. There's a whole range of things which go into good sleep hygiene. But the first step is to accept its importance and to prioritize it. So, and then when you've done all that commit to the next 2-3 months of, I'm really going to take this seriously, I'm really going to do it. And now you are getting to sleep. And there's also a breathing exercise you can do just before you go to bed that will help you switch on the rest and digest part of our nervous system. And it's just a simple breathe in for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and hold your breath for 4 seconds. And you just do that for a minute or two once you've switched the lights off, and you just calm down. Okay, now, a lot of people's lives are stressful, and it's not as easy as that, I know, but this is about routine. And once you've done that for a month or two, and you're still tired, you are sleeping. Now you are getting to sleep, and you are getting your 9 hour or 7 to 9 hour sleep, but you're still waking up feeling tired. Well, then you've got to look at the breathing part of things, and maybe you're snoring. Maybe your airway is blocked. Maybe you actually stop breathing while you are asleep. It's called obstructive sleep apnea, and that is a very, very serious condition that largely goes ignored and often goes undiagnosed and has really important implications for your health. So, lots of people have problems with sleep, and lots of people's sleep is affected by stress, I know, but people think of stress as just being emotional stress, and that's why I talk about those 5 other stresses. We need to identify as many of them as we can and minimize as many of those as we have control over.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes so much sense thinking about it from that angle. And my partner, she actually has, I was just thinking about that. She's got really bad sleep apnea, like talking like 10 to 12 episodes per hour. So she's obviously on one of those CPAP machines. And, I wouldn't be surprised if I was dealing with something similar. I mean, I have all kinds of weird things going on in my sleep. So, but yeah, all those things you just mentioned are things that I struggle with. I can't put my phone away. It seems like I can't relax, unwind for more than a few minutes. And my phone's right by my head, and it's on until the second I go to sleep and all that.
Well, Steve, a message for dads, this is a really important one because I was in this position myself. I had started to snore in my early 40s, and I used to dismiss it as my wife's problem. Come on, big deal, get over it. What's the problem? And I did that for about 5 to 10 years. And then when I was about 48 years old, my wife said, listen, this is so bad that you're going to have to move into another room. And suddenly her problem became my problem. And I took it seriously. And I never thought I slept badly, right? Remember that. I never thought I slept badly. And so I thought I'd do something about it because I thought it was just too young to move into another room. So I did something about it. I didn't get a CPAP machine. I got a mandibular advancement splint. It's something that holds the jaw forward at night and stops the jaw from dropping back. And the tongue's attached to the lower jaw. So that's what can block the airway. So I got what's called a mandibular advancement splint. And I wore it for the first 1 or 2 nights, and my wife was really pleased because I wasn't snoring. But what happened was incredible. I suddenly realized what a good night's sleep I was getting. And I thought, wow, hang on, I'm actually feeling really good. And not only was I feeling, after a week or two, feeling really good with a lot more energy, but so was she, because I wasn't disturbing her sleep. And suddenly the two of us, our health improved because of this commitment that I made to do something about my snoring, which I had just dismissed as some kind of trivial, it's your problem, not mine thing. So this is a really common thing I hear a lot when I go and give lectures and courses. The women are nodding their heads going, yeah, he snores, but he just won't take it seriously. Well, I'm telling you, this is a really important thing, not just for your own health, not just for the health of your partner, but for the health of your relationships. It's a really basic thing that you should not ignore.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so
how's
common.
How's that for a pep talk, Steve?
Yeah, I like it. It's true. I mean, I don't know how many people I know that snore. I mean, and like you said, it's not really my problem, but yeah, it is. It is. So, I mean, we could talk. I mean, I could talk about this for hours, and I know that we could have a 2-hour conversation on each one of these pillars and dive into it deeply. But I want to talk about nutrition because it's, one of the main players, when it comes to your health and wellness and obviously your body composition. So, what's frustrating for me is, I'm not a gimmicky person. I'm not trying to sell any diet program or any quick fix. And, I feel like, research on food and nutrition, it's no longer done to improve our health, right? It's all marketing. Everything that's done now, I feel like the government and these agencies are more interested in making money than they are trying to help us. And so, things are getting worse. Even though we have more and more information, we're getting fatter and fatter. And I think a lot of it's tied back into, food companies and supplement companies are funding a lot of these, the research that's being done. And so, it's kind of tied in together. And so, like, let's say a supplement company donates money for research and they're expecting like a health claim to come out of it because they know health claims sell products, right? And I feel like that's the underlying motive here in this country anyway. And it's not necessarily let's get this country healthy. Let's sell them more products. Let's sell them something that they have to have, like these chemical-filled products that are addictive and we keep buying more of, and they're cheap and they're delicious. And we're caught in this endless cycle. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's how I look at this as a whole.
Well, Steve, the first part of my book is on that very subject, and it's a really important thing for people. It's why I've included it in my book. The book's in 3 parts, and the first part is very much about that. Because if the overall message is you've got to take control of your own health, because you listen to public health messages. Should you be on low fat or high fat? Should you be on seed oil or saturated fat? Should you be on keto or paleo? Should you be on this? Should you be on that? And so what you really need to understand is that, as you pointed out, that a lot of public health messages, certainly those that are, and this is the same in Australia, by the way, that have come from the FDA, your Food and Drug Administration, that have come from your Heart Foundation, your Diabetes Council, that come from the American and Australian Dietitians Association. When you look at the sponsors of these organisations, you have to wonder about a conflict of interest. So this is a story that is very easy to miss, but once you hear it, it's very difficult to ignore. And you could look at it and throw your arms up and go, what the hell? I don't know who to believe. I'm just going to eat whatever I like. Wrong. The message you should come out of it with is, hey, listen, this is just too important to leave to anybody else. I have to take control of this myself. And then you get to, okay, so what do I eat? Well, it's not rocket science. I mean, eat real food. There's a good start. Don't eat anything that's processed. No one argues about that. Make the foundation of your diet vegetable base. No one argues about that. We need vegetables in lots of colours with lots of fibre for lots of reasons. So no one argues about that. Should you be on high carb or low carb? Well, it depends what you mean by high carb or low carb. Every single disease, heart disease, cancer, autoimmune diseases, mental health, diabetes, every disease is better the lower your insulin level is. So low carb is better. But does that mean Atkins 20 grams of low carb? I think that's unsustainable. That's 20 grams per day. I don't know how that translates to ounces in America. But 20 grams is, I believe, unsustainable. It's very difficult to sustain. You go on to your USDA site. I went on there just recently, and I put in my age and I put in my weight, and they told me what I should be eating is between 375 and 450 grams of carb a day. I mean, that's just absurd. So I think it depends on your exercise level, but I aim for around 70 to 80 grams of carb a day. I think that's sustainable and doable. If I was exercising more, then I would, and I do exercise 3 or 4 times a week in short, high-intensity training with some weight-bearing exercise. But if I was a long-distance runner, I might do more, say 120 grams a day or 150, but I'm not more than that. So keeping that low is, I think, important. The other thing that I think is really important is drink clean water. I don't think, that's rocket science. Drink clean water. That's still the best drink. I think salt has been demonized unfairly. I think we should be having good quality salt. There's a difference between table salt, which contains just sodium and chloride, and a good quality salt which can have up to 50 or 60 different trace elements. So I think salt has been unfairly demonized. I think healthy fats are important. I think natural, healthy fats are important. I think the seed oils that are literally being pushed down our throats by the heart foundations and other organizations is wrong. I think we've had a relationship with healthy fats from healthy animals, and there's a whole other story about healthy animals. What's good for an animal is generally good for us. So if standing in a feedlot being fed grain for 300 or 400 days or its whole life, that's just not good for an animal. So this is why I think grass-fed is important, and the fats that come from grass-fed animals important. And the other thing that's really important is, when in human history have we eaten 3 meals a day with snacks? When in human history have we done that? So I do think time-restricted eating and intermittent fasting is a really important thing that actually does not cost anything. It actually zero cost, to eat a little, to stop eating sometimes. It's good for your body, it's good for your hunger, it's good for your blood chemistry. It cleans out all the crappy cells that are still there. There is so much good information around that. So I think it's not rocket science. Just eat real food and keep the carbs low, and eat healthy and eat from healthy animals that have been ethically grown, and time-restricted eating and intermittent fasting is a really positive thing.
And these are exactly it's like I've written what you just said. It's exactly my philosophies on what you just talked about. And you mentioned something that's really important. It's the sustainability of an approach to eating. And, obviously like a keto diet, for example, has gotten a massive amount of press because, yes, you're going to lose weight. Why? Because you're basically eliminating an entire macronutrient. You're dropping your calories low. Yeah, you strip something like that out. Yeah, you're going to lose weight because you're going to be eating a lot less, right? But you're miserable most of the time, right? And it's not sustainable for most people. Can it work? Yes, of course. Can it be sustainable? Yes, some people can do it long term, but that's what it comes down to, right? You don't want to go on a keto diet, lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks, and then you're so miserable and that you go back to eating a normal traditional diet of 50% carbs and you gain all your weight back, and now you've lost some muscle tissue and now you're fatter than you were before. And it's like the yo-yo dieting, but it's so prevalent. And just the basics, right? The vegetables. And now there's this whole movement about carnivores. This carnivore diet is blowing up, and I'm like, no vegetables, 0 vegetables. I'm like, well, how does that even make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So like, that's the problem though, is people spend their time on social media. They're reading these bro science articles with passed down, regurgitated information that's not even from a credible source. And they're saying, well, this is working over here, and this guy got results, and my buddy John, he just lost 50 pounds doing this, and it's a mess,
Well, look, I think the biggest challenge for all of us, Steve, is sustainability of our health and keeping on track. I mean, I always think of myself, it's a percentage game for me. And hey, we're all on our health journey. So, this what I talk about is aspirational as much to me as anything, So I'm not pretending I'm perfect all the time. In fact, for me, it's a percentage game. And everyone's got to work out what their percentage is. If your percentage of good versus bad into your health is 50-50, I think you've got a serious problem. If it's 60-40, I think you've still got a serious problem. 70-30, you're getting there. I think 80-20 is sustainable. I think 80-20 is realistic. When I'm on fire, I'm 90-10. That's when I'm at my absolute best. If I go to 100%, I'm a social outcast. No one wants to be near me, because I'm just not, it's not sustainable, socially sustainable, because we live in a real world. And so you've got to find that percentage. And for me, that percentage is 80-20, realistically. And when I'm on fire, 90-10. And that's where I try to stay throughout my life.
That's exactly it. I mean, that's exactly it. I talk about that all the time. 80% of the time, if you're doing the right things 80% of the time, you're going to be fine, right? Because you can't go all in like that. It's not sustainable. Especially, I mean, in this country, we're raised to eat a diet of 50 to 60% carbohydrates, much of it processed. You can't just say, all right, well, I'm never going to eat all pasta, rice, grains. I'm never going to eat this again. And does it happen? Yes, but it's so unlikely. But yeah, it just comes down to that. And you mentioned intermittent fasting, and that's actually one of my favorite tools. We don't hear enough about it because there's no money in it, right? Because basically there's nothing to sell. There's nothing to sell, right? You're just not eating.
Yeah.
So we do challenges in our groups every month. And I think probably the most successful one we've ever run was a very simple, progressive intermittent fasting challenge. And not only did a lot of guys see some physical benefits, but the whole approach, the mindset and the mindfulness of what you're eating, why you're eating, when you're eating, it becomes, I mean, it was so eye-opening for me personally and for so many guys. Like, holy crap, I didn't realize that I was eating so much, or I was eating at this time, or this triggered my eating. And it changes your whole approach to eating. And for me, it was one of the best experiences I've had. And so now I use it. And I think it's a phenomenal tool.
I couldn't, I've been interested. I did my first nutrition course in 1981, about 3 years after I graduated. And I've been interested in nutrition ever since. And I've written chapters in another book on it, and I've written articles on it. And what I'm amazed in, that only over the last 5 years of that whole journey has this really come up. And I think to myself, wow, I mean, that is just so obvious. I mean, it's just so simple. It's so obvious. I mean, and as you say, it doesn't sell a lot of product. It's about as cheap dietary intervention as is actually possible to do. And yet the effect of it is so profound on so many different levels, physically, mentally, biochemically, on a cellular level, on a blood sugar level. It's just profound. I agree with you. And it's only something that I've come to in the last 5 or so years. And yet you think about it on an evolutionary sense, and you think, actually, yeah, our bodies probably are well adapted to going through periods where we don't always have an abundance of food.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe that's part of the problem.
Exactly. I mean, you know as well as I do, we have unlimited resources of food. I mean, it's at our fingertips 24/7, and we're just overfed. We're constantly overfed. And, anybody's pantry is stuffed to the gills with processed carbohydrates, and you're just nibbling, snacking. It's never ending, and you're never end up in that fasted state. You're just constantly feeding yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, all right. So, man, there's just so many things I wanted to talk to you about. It's interesting is you mentioned multiple times in this conversation about taking control, which, is just another way of saying taking responsibility. I think that is one huge problem as a society here is we don't take responsibility for our health. It's everybody is blaming someone or something. And, I was just watching this show the other day called My 600-Pound Life. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's these morbidly obese people who are very unhealthy, and they're going to see a doctor about having gastric bypass surgery. But 9 out of 10 of them don't even take responsibility for their condition. This happened when I was a kid. This isn't my fault. It's this. And it's not just them, but it's a lot of this country. You hear it every day. You need to take care of yourself starting now. I mean, it's on you. That's it.
Yeah. Well, look, I tell you what, I think one of my chapters is on nutritional stress. And, I still talk about that 5 stressor model. And nutritional stress is an interesting one because whenever you talk about nutritional stress, people expect you to hold up a sign of hamburgers and chips, French fries, you call them, and pizzas. That is nutritional stress, but I look at the food pyramid that was put out, that was negotiated between industry and government and science to some degree in the 80s, and eventually the FDA approved it in America in 1993. I consider that food pyramid, the low-fat dogma, and make carbs the foundation of a meal, has set people up for failure from day one. And there's lots of good reasons. I mean, it's a great economic model. It's literally fed by the chemical and the food industry, and it's managed by the pharmaceutical and medical industry. It's a wonderful economic model. I mean, in America, you guys spend almost 20% of your GDP on health, and yet you guys come up in the OECD countries somewhere around number 40. So if the answer to healthcare is to spend more money on health, America is an excellent example of not doing that. It's a great economic model. It's not a good health model. So I believe people have been set up for failure, and that's why they need to understand that story that is, I said, so easy to miss but difficult to ignore. And once you hear it, the only response I hope you have from that is, wow, I have to take control of my own health now. It's just too important to leave to anybody else. And that's a real aha moment, which some people are prepared for and others are just not.
That's exactly right. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you get started. So, although we've been talking about the basics and the simplicity behind all of this, what would you say to someone that's listening? Let's call it a 42-year-old dad, a couple of kids, a high-stress job. He's 30, 40 pounds overweight, eats a typical diet, the bowl of cereal in the morning, a burger and fries for lunch, whatever for dinner his wife makes, a piece of meat and a little bit of vegetables and a starch. That's a typical American diet. Not particularly paying attention to any of the things that you're talking about, his sleep, his exercise, his movement, his nutrition is What do you tell that guy? Let's just do this or these 2 or 3 things to get you started on just feel better. I want you to feel better. I want you to be healthier. I want you to live better. I want you to live longer. Where do we get started?
Well, I suppose there's two. Well, I think you have to come to that decision first. And look, as far as I know, Steve, and we only get one shot at life. So I think, whatever your goal in life is, I think we could share one thing all of us would have in common, I would hope, and that is to fulfill our potential. So whether that means as a father, as a friend, as a member of the community, as a business, whatever. So prioritize it. Recognize its importance and recognize that you're the only person that can make that decision. Number one. Number two, I think sleep, to focus for a couple of months. Say you're going to go on a 3-month experiment where you're just going to focus on sleeping well. And you are going to, during that period, just reduce your consumption of processed foods. That's it. I would just say, number one, prioritize, recognize its importance because you've only got one shot at life. Make it worthwhile. Fulfill your potential. Number two, I'm just going to focus on sleep for the next 2 or 3 months. And by that, it's a function of quantity and quality. Get the technology out of the room. Rest. Relax. And there's a whole story around sleep hygiene. And just eliminate processed food for a month or two and see how you feel at the end of a month or two. I think one of the things that is a worthwhile experiment for everybody to go through is to commit to really following these 5 pillars for a period of 3 or 4 months, just to benchmark yourself to realize how well you can feel. Because a lot of people have just got used to, this is the way I am. This is how I feel. This is normal. And that's just, that is a very sad place to be. So you have to at least benchmark yourself once in your life to realize how well you can feel. And then you can start to make compromises. But I think it takes about a 3-month commitment of sleep and eliminate processed foods. You can get into the nuances. I think intermittent fasting, being part of your group to do that, is a great way to kickstart a new approach to eating, to nutrition. I think it is a great way to start. And, I think that would be part of it. So do it in a group. Do it with other people like you're doing with your groups. I think it's a great way. We need, Steve, this was the other thing. Harvard have done the longest study ever on health and well-being, 75 years. 75 years study, and they looked at longevity, health and wellness. And what did they find was the best predictor of longevity, health and wellness? It wasn't smoking, it wasn't cholesterol, it wasn't blood pressure, it was relationships. And relationships are key. So things like what you're doing, bringing people together to focus on a health, on being healthy. Fit Dad Nation. Wow, is that ever aspirational? That sort of thing, and doing it together with other people makes it easier because we need relationships in our lives.
Yeah, for sure. It's actually the main reason why everything that we do now is in groups. I used to do a lot of one-on-one and coaching, but now I've just seen the power of these guys coming together as part of a tribe, and they feed off of each other and they share their wins and losses, and it's so powerful. And so, yeah, everything that we do now is in groups.
Yeah, well, that's how we evolved. We evolved to be in small groups, in tribes. And if you can surround yourself with people that are, got similar values, I mean, we need to keep open minds, of course, because, our world has become very polarized because we've kind of got in these filter bubbles. That's a whole other story about the impact of technology on our lives, and how polarizing that's become. But I think being in a healthy tribe is a good way to be.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, seriously, so many of the things you said, pretty much everything that you've said is my thought process on the whole health and wellness industry, the nutrition, everything that you're talking about. So, here's my thought. And so I would love, if you're open to it, to have you on again at some point, down the road, because I want to read through your book, really kind of pick out some very important parts that I think would be really beneficial to the community, and then maybe get into more specifics on a couple of different topics, because we could literally talk for hours about this. It's obviously huge subjects here. So if you're open to that, I would love to do that.
I'd love to do it too, Steve.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. So, where do you want people listening to find more about you?
Well, they can go onto my website, which is drronehrlich.com, and that's DRRON, not doctor spelt out. It's drronehrlich.com. And there's podcasts and there's ebooks. There's actually a practical guide to the 5 pillars, and there's 3 free webinars that we've got, and there's an e-course coming up in September. So, on the 5 pillars, where I go through this in a lot more detail, each pillar one by one. So they could go onto that website, and Steve, I'd be very happy to come back and talk to you about any one of the subjects in my book.
Yeah, that'd be great. Fantastic. And I'll put links to that in the show notes. And I really appreciate your time, and I'm really looking forward to chatting again.
A pleasure. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you want more information, check out the Fit Dad Basecamp group on Facebook. And don't forget to stop by fitdadnation.com. Until next time, keep kicking ass and taking the next step. You can do this, Dad.